All right, looks like we have a pretty good crowd so far. I'll go ahead and get us started today and let other folks come in as they want. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session for our Advancements in Educational Technology Symposium in partnership with the Teaching Effectiveness Symposium. And this session is going to be about polling in your courses. And joining me today is Levi Sterling. My name's Zach Peterson with the IT Training and Communications team. I'll be your moderator for today. Before I hand it over to Levi, just to get a few things out of the way for you, if you do have any questions during this session, please feel free to click on the Q&A button in your Zoom client and send those along, and we will keep an eye on those and make sure that we get those answered for you. Also, we are recording these sessions, and we are in the process of getting this session, as well as all of the previous sessions from this week, up online and available for you to refer back to. So stay tuned for those. We will be getting those up very shortly. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Levi. Take it away.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're all joining me here. I know there's probably other more fun things that you could think to do with your Friday afternoon, so I promise we'll try to keep it light, try to keep it quick, but also at the same time, I think there's some really good stuff to cover here. So I think there's some good information, a lot of things that we can do to really add that interactive element to our online courses, which that's the big thing online always seems to miss, right? That interactivity, that student feedback, that knowing that your students are engaged, measuring engagement, sensing engagement. Hopefully we can cover some of the things, some of the tools that will enable that a little bit more. When you registered, you probably noticed that the overall title of what we're covering today is Polleverywhere. All right, so let's look at Polleverywhere, shall we? I'm gonna switch what I'm sharing in just a second, and we're going to go over to looking at Polleverywhere. So let's switch to here. Now, this is what I found whenever this is my first take on Polleverywhere. And for those of you who are registered for this, who have not used Polleverywhere before, maybe there's a chance you decided, I'm going to go check out Polleverywhere before I go to this. And here's what you find when you go to your web browser of choice. Polleverywhere SMU. This is how I always find stuff. Find whatever I'm looking for and add SMU into it, right? Okay, so here we go. Polleverywhere. This is not actually Polleverywhere. This is an article about Polleverywhere. That doesn't help me. Classroom response system. That's probably what I'm looking for. Links to some articles. Oh, there's Polleverywhere. So if I click on it, it takes me to a Notre Dame article. Some of you had this exact same experience. Some of you went through and you looked at all these different things and you're like, finally, here we go. Oh, nope, Samuel Merritt University. That's not the right SMU. This is just a regular Polleverywhere site. And you got frustrated and you went, wow, so what exactly am I supposed to be doing? And then you decided to do something like this. You decided to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just take a poll without Polleverywhere because I'm frustrated with Polleverywhere, not doing it. Couldn't figure out how to get it, didn't make sense, couldn't even find it anywhere. So let's do that. Let's start off with not Polleverywhere. Let's start off with where you may have already ended up, and let's improve on what you may have already done. Let's start with just polls, not Polleverywhere. Because there are ways to take polls without having to use Polleverywhere that I think you might really like. And maybe you tried them and you didn't like them, and there's just ways to tweak it so that it can be a little bit better. One way to take polls is polling in Zoom. There's a number of ways to take a poll in Zoom, and we're going to do a quick walkthrough of those different ways to do polls in Zoom. One of the easiest ways to do polls in Zoom that you've probably seen before is reactions. Now, I'm going to interrupt myself here just really quickly and talk about the Zoom session we are currently in. The Zoom session we are currently in is a webinar. It is not a Zoom meeting. So I know I'm one of those people that as someone is talking about something, I like to go look at it and click on it and play with it. A lot of the things that we're going to be talking about, the layout, the look, the feel, the usability aspects of them really are for Zoom meetings, not for webinars. So if you don't see things where you expect, you don't find the buttons that you're expecting or that I'm talking about, it's because we're in a webinar. That's why you're not seeing some of the things that I will be talking about. So back to the Zoom meeting. You got your reactions. Those are the most basic 2 little reactions that you've got. They basically are the ones where you can do the clapping or the thumbs up. They're nice ways to get a quick reaction from students. It's a good way. I like to start off Zoom meetings with, can I get a thumbs up if anybody can hear me? And sometimes that means people can hear me and they click it. Sometimes that means they can't hear me, so they don't click it. Sometimes that means they're just ignoring me. But if I get 1 or 2, that means I know I'm good to go. It's also nice after somebody's given a great presentation to give them the clapping round of applause. So that's the reactions. Reactions are something that is available in Zoom. It's down at the bottom. Students can click on it and give a reaction. It's a good way to do a quick poll. Now, this is not polling students for how they feel about something. This is a, do you agree, yes or no, binary, on, off type of response. There's also thumbs. And when I mean thumbs, I mean literally thumbs. That's what it looks like. Sometimes when you say, give me a thumbs up, people click the button for a thumbs up, and sometimes they just go, sure thing. So it's another way. Now, the nice thing is you can do thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side, which gives you a little bit more of a range that you can ask for. But again, you're not getting in-depth responses from students. You're not getting how certain they really are of something. You're not getting creative responses. You're not getting individualized responses. It's all still on a sliding scale at best. I mention this because other folks talk about it. I don't necessarily love it, but let's go ahead and mention it. The camera or mic feedback system. And what I mean by this, some folks will use muting or unmuting their mic or turning on or off their camera as a system of voting. Now, like I said, some folks use it. I don't love it. Just know that when you hear someone talking about using the mute unmute voting system, that this is what they're talking about. You can see right here, this is in the participants tab. You've got the little icons. Basically what they're looking for is, okay, if you're ready to move on, unmute your microphone. Now, I think this is weird and a strange way to use the technology, but it's something some folks do. It is an option, I suppose. There's also nonverbal feedback. Now, nonverbal feedback and reactions often get confused when we're talking about them, but they are 2 different things. One of the reasons that it's kind of confusing is because you'll notice in the nonverbal feedback, it actually has the thumbs up symbol and the clapping symbol in there. It has 2 of the exact same symbols that you can use. The nice thing about nonverbal feedback is it has a little bit more available. It's not just those 2 options. And you can actually find these responses, let me go back one, in that participants tab. In the participants window, next to where you see whether people have their mic on or their camera on, whether it's being recorded, and their name, you will actually see their reactions. You can clear those nonverbal reactions, so that nonverbal feedback, after asking a question, so you know when you're ready to move on to the next one as well. Nonverbal feedback is something that you will need to turn on. It is not turned on by default, unless of course something has changed. Zoom updates fairly often, but to my knowledge, it is not something that is turned on by default. You will have to go in and turn on nonverbal feedback. We're still limited. We're still only giving people a few set responses, but it is slightly richer feedback. It takes a quick straw poll of the room, but again, it's not a whole lot fancier than how many of you are ready to go on. Then there's polling in Zoom. And I'm going to drop in the chat a link to more information about polling for meetings. You can actually do a poll inside of Zoom. Now, the tricky thing about creating a Zoom poll is you have to create the Zoom poll after the meeting has been created. Now, the good news for that is what that means is if you have a meeting set up, you already have sent the invite out The link has already been established. The password is already set. The students already know where to go. You can still go into that meeting, add a poll to that meeting, and it doesn't get rid of that link. It doesn't change that link. It doesn't make that link invalid. They can still click on that same link to get back in to what you have sent. You've just added a poll to a pre-existing meeting. So you can go through, create a poll. It's a lot more rich whenever it comes to the questions you can ask, because you can actually type in real questions. You can type in real answers. You can choose whether or not you want to share that feedback that comes from students, or you can just keep it to yourself. You can also have not just multiple questions, but multiple polls. The reason you would have multiple polls is, let's say you have a block of 2 questions that you want to ask together, then release the results. You just have a discussion for another 10 or 15 minutes and have another block of questions that you discuss and then release the results. So remember, multiple questions and multiple polls in the same meeting. You just have to set it up before the meeting starts, but after you have created the meeting. That's done from the website portal, which is smu.zoom.us/meeting. So go there, the website of it, you can create polls from in there. That's Zoom. That's creating polls in Zoom. Now, we went everywhere from the most basic thumbs up, thumbs down to actually having polls in Zoom. That's if you don't feel like going outside of Zoom. If you just want to operate with what you have in there right now. So that's your Zoom setup. Let's pause real quick and see if we have any questions about polling just in Zoom. So there was a question about the URL for polls in Zoom. So in order to add a poll, you would go to smu.zoom.us/meeting. I put that in the chat. And then you would just go to the meeting settings and you add a poll. It's at the very bottom. Then the link that I put underneath that, the support.zoom.us, that's the information walking you through how to do a poll. I could create a whole setup of documentation on how to create a poll in Zoom. If you haven't checked out Zoom's documentation, it's really good, and I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel. Check out their documentation. It is very good. All right. We've talked about, tell you what, let's go ahead and pull up a Zoom meeting while we're here. I'm gonna do a change in what I'm sharing real quick. And do a lets me in. All right, if I am in Zoom, smu.zoom.us/meeting, when I go to schedule a new meeting, you will not see anything about polls. It's not until you've actually created one. So I've actually gone ahead and created one right here. I'm going to click on that. And you will see down at the bottom, after you have created a meeting, it has to be a finished, not a meeting that is completed, one that you are done creating. You scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll have the option for polls. You can add a poll, and you can add questions to that poll. So it's going to be down at the very bottom after you have created the meeting. The meeting has to exist first and has to be saved before you can add polls to it. All right, awesome. Okay, let's go back to all right, we've gone through our options in Zoom. Now, there may be other things that I haven't mentioned that I haven't thought of. I guess you could use your chat to do polls, but at that point, we're not really taking a poll, are we? We're more just asking a question. So let's try to stick more to actual polls. I'm going off script here, and I'm not going to talk about Polleverywhere. I'm going to talk about Junkie. Remember that problem I had earlier where I went to go find Polleverywhere and I got really frustrated because, well, it just never really felt like I could find it. Kind of felt like I was always looking around and not actually getting to Polleverywhere. Well, that actually happened to me. I got frustrated. I needed a poll. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to use. So I started looking for something else, some other tool that I could use that would be beneficial to me so that I could actually have a good poll that just worked. I also, and this is just a personal thing, maybe you agree with this, maybe you disagree, I really don't like having to sign up for accounts for everything. I like things that have no account. I like things that I don't have to log in. I like things that just work. And that's whenever I discovered Junkie. This is the homepage of Junkie, polljunkie.com. I'm going to share that link also in the chat. From the very start, Junkie says, no sign up, no login, and you get results. That's exactly what I want. I don't want to have to sign up for an account. I don't want to have to log in, and I want to get results. You're not going to believe how easy this is. Get started. Your poll is being saved while you work, so feel free to go and come back later. Cool. I like that. I'm going to call the name of my poll. This is a poll. I'm going to set it to expire on Sunday because why not? And I'm going to put my email address in. What that's going to do is it's going to send me ways to get back to this poll later, which is really convenient. By default, it allows me to choose to share it. I can also set it to where it's just open to the world, right up here under open polls. I don't want to do that. It leaves it as a default that you get to choose who to share it with, so I'm going to do that. At this point, I can add questions. There's 4 different types of questions it supports. Multiple choice, now, I really wanted to have blue, red, and yellow as options. You'll notice that it says right here, add more after saving this question. So before I continue on, I have to save, and then I can add another option in. Actually, I didn't want yellow. I wanted green. I can either just change it or delete it and add another. Right here, this one says allow multiple selections. What that's going to do is that's going to allow for me to pick more than one. I want them to have to pick just one. Let's do another one. Multiple choice. Now let's do rating 1 through 10. How much do you like ice cream? 1, not at all. 10, I love it. Actually, you know what? Let's do it on a scale of 1 to 20. It's very nice. You can go in, you can change it. Now, 1 to 20 scale is kind of weird, but I just wanted to show you that it exists. All right, add a question. Ranking. Which is the best mascot? Peruna, Bevo, and I really want to have more than one, so I'm going to click save. And then I'm going to type in I'm going to realize I always struggle with spelling Reveille, so I'm going to say that A-N-M dog. Yeah, that'll get the message across. And one more question, free text. This is going to say, what do you love most about SMU? I'm going to require that this be answered and click save. At that point, I have one of each different question type. I'm going to hit create. But before I hit create, I'm going to agree. Now, if you want to read through the terms of service, I'll let you do that on your own time. There's nothing scary in there. Once I hit create, It's going to take me to the admin page. Now, from here, I've got links to all kinds of things. I can take the poll, I can view the results, I can edit the page, I can copy the poll. What I'm going to do is real quick, put my email address in and say email links. And it's going to email me all of these links so that I can come back and find it later. Now, in the chat box, I am going to put a link to this poll. If you would like to, go ahead and click on that poll, fill it out, and then I can show you what the results look like. From here, you have a link to take the poll. You have a link to view the results. There's a link to the admin page, which there's no little button for because we're already there. You can edit the poll that you have already created, or you can clone it. If you like it, but you want to base another poll off of it, but you want to have unique links up top. There are some more advanced settings in here. Let's not mess with those. And you can even embed the poll in your site. It creates a nice little tool just like this that if you know what you're doing when it comes to HTML, you can actually embed. So let's take a look. Let's see if anybody has completed the poll. Looks like we're getting some results in. Someone says blue, someone says 18. Obviously, Peruna is the best, and Reveille, AKA that A&M dog, is second. What do you love most about SMU? It's small. Let's see if we've gotten any more results in. And look at that, we've got 5 responses now. Here's where it really is beautiful to me, and I really get excited about what Poll Junkie offers. If I click right here, I can also get different types of graphs. There's all kinds of information that is available, and I didn't have to set up any of this. What do you love most about SMU? Ice cream. That's a great answer. I also can go in, let's see if we can populate a few more. No, we're still at 5, that's okay. I can also go in and I can export it into a CSV. And right there, I have a CSV document that I can get all of my results. It's great. I really like Poll Junkie. As you can see, this entire session started 22 minutes ago. I spent most of our time at the beginning talking about different ways to pull information from students in Zoom. We've only spent a few minutes inside Poll Junkie, and I've already gotten in, set up a poll, sent the poll, and gotten results. Like I said, the beauty of Poll Junkie is that there's not a lot of setup. You don't have to have an account. You don't have to log in. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It just works. Poll Junkie is a good enough type of poll that if you find yourself in a situation where you go, oh no, I meant to have a poll set up for the Zoom session. I know what I want to ask, but I forgot to include it. It's not going to completely derail your class to say, hey folks, give me 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes time, you can have a poll ready for them so long as you know the questions that you're wanting to ask. Really is nice, really is fast, and just gets you moving. Okay. So we talked about Poll Junkie. From the beginning, I said, let's talk about Polleverywhere. And then I said, no, let's not talk about Polleverywhere. Let's talk about how to do polls in Zoom. And let's talk about how to do Poll Junkie. Because, well, I like Poll Junkie better. I think it's easier. I think it's simpler. But you know what? You signed up for it. It said Polleverywhere on the name. So we'll do it. We'll go ahead and talk about Polleverywhere. Now, there's a chance that I have convinced you to do something other than Polleverywhere. And if I did, that's okay. I'm fine with that. I might even be happy with that. But if you really want to know about Polleverywhere, well, I guess can't hurt to have one more thing that we know, one more tool in our tool belt, right? So here's Polleverywhere. Now I know there's that question that's coming to the forefront of your mind at this point, which is, wait, how did you get there? How do we get into Polleverywhere? What's the deal here? Well, there's 2 options here. One, if you want to, you can create a Polleverywhere account for yourself. Now, what you have is going to be limited, and you're not going to have, all the features that you would have from a licensed account, but you can create your own Polleverywhere account if you would like. I don't like having to have one more account to keep track of, but it is an option. You can also contact your ATSD. Your ATSD can get you the information that you need in order to get a SMU licensed Polleverywhere account. Now, one of the things that I would say is there are a limited number of Polleverywhere accounts, and we just don't have enough to license everyone on campus. So it is on a request basis. Now, hopefully, by showing you Junkie, I've actually reduced the number of people that are going to be craving a Polleverywhere account. But, you know, it is a good tool. It is the most feature-rich tool. It does have the most involved. So let's go in, create an activity. Like I said about Junkie, I like the simplicity of it. Right off the very beginning, Polleverywhere, while it does have a lot of stuff, to me almost has too much. But if you see something that you're looking for, if you see something that you're needing, try to not get overwhelmed by how much there is. Just try to focus on saying, oh wow, that is something that I wanted. I do like that. That is a great feature. Because some of the features are pretty cool, especially when you look at things like word cloud. And I'm not going to go through every single thing that's in here. There's multiple choice. I already showed you how to set up one multiple choice. It's not any different in here. But there are some unique things like word cloud. What it does is visualize audience response as a dynamic word cloud. If you haven't seen word clouds before, it's a pretty cool way to sort of get the feeling, the thoughts behind how someone is feeling about something. Also not something you can capture in a lot of other ways. So you can create a word cloud. That's pretty nice. Q&A is pretty straightforward. Clickable image is also really cool. Upload an image and ask a question. Participants click anywhere on the image to respond. Now, is a clickable image that useful for every single class that is being taught on campus? No. But could I see it being super useful anywhere that is teaching visual arts or any sort of visual communication? Yeah, definitely. Imagine a class where you're looking at a painting and you're wanting to study where is your eye drawn in the painting. You can ask your students, click right where your eye is drawn first. Now click where your eye is drawn second. What a great way to actually be able to capture that data and then have a discussion about why. Survey, pretty straightforward, open-ended. This just lets people put in a free-form answer. And then competitions. Under competitions, you create a series of questions and then let the participants compete for the answer fastest. This is if you're trying to add a little bit of a gamification to your class. Now here's where it really gets crazy. If I click on the More button, and you see there's a whole bunch more things we can add in. Now, like I said, it all depends on what you're looking for. It all depends on how much you're wanting to make, how much of a poll you're actually needing. For me, for 90% of the time, if I need to have a poll that I'm requesting, people give me feedback, then I have found that the most that I need is Junkie. It's going to give me everything I need just to get basic feedback. Now, if I am looking for something a little more rich with a little more detail, Polleverywhere really does have really cool things. And I will say one of my absolute favorites is the clickable image. I think the clickable image is great, especially if I'm trying to get feedback from people on a visual design. Please click on an area that you think is a problem. Send it out to a group of folks. If you get more than one or two people clicking on the same area, you know that's an area that needs to be fixed. So that's what Polleverywhere has. Like I said, I could spend 2 hours going through every single one of the things that's in here. I would just say, check it out, see what there is. If there's something that grabs your attention and you think, boy, I could really use that in my class, then great. Contact your ATSD. They can get you set up with an account. Otherwise, now you have Zoom tools that you can use for a poll. You have Junkie you can use for a poll. And if you're really looking for that Swiss Army knife that'll do everything, maybe it takes a little bit more time, maybe it's a little bit more to sort through, but that power tool that is available in Polleverywhere. All right, let's see what questions we've got at this point.
Yes, I do have one. David asks, for either poll service that you've shown us, Junkie and Polleverywhere, do either of those services allow you to see exactly who answered and who has not?
So with Junkie, the only way that you would be able to capture who has answered would be to have that free form question that I showed at the very bottom, where I asked about what's your favorite thing about SMU, to have a required part where the students have to put in their name. At that point, you could use that to capture their name, but because there are no logins, it is not going to capture it. In Polleverywhere, you have two options. You have the option to just create an anonymous poll that you can send out, and you don't really know who is answering those questions. So if it's an anonymous poll that doesn't require sign-in, then there would not be a way to do it. You can also have it to where they have to be authenticated users in Polleverywhere. And if they are authenticated Polleverywhere users, then yes, you can see exactly who has and has not answered. Now, my biggest warning on something like that is anytime you're going to be sharing a poll or anything like that, anything that requires a student to have an account that they may not previously have, because this is not a single sign-on enabled system. It is not something that they automatically have an account because they're SMU students. You want to make sure that they are prepared for that ahead of time, because an entire group of students, especially if you're talking a large lecture hall where you're going to be taking a poll and you have to tell your students, hey, go here, download this app or sign up for this account, while trying to get answers from them in a timely manner, it's not great. It can really slow you down a whole lot. What else we got?
Oh yeah, so we do have another question for both Poll Junkie and Polleverywhere. How do you go about integrating those into Zoom, and is that even the best way to utilize the polls by integrating them in Zoom?
So neither one of them has a direct Zoom integration. Polleverywhere has a PowerPoint integration, and Polleverywhere and Poll Junkie both have the ability to create the little widgets that you could place like in a Canvas course, but neither one of them has direct Zoom integration. That being said, the good news is with both of them, it is as easy when you are in a Zoom session as sharing the link in the chat box, and now all of a sudden your students have access to it. When it comes to, if you're wanting a system that's completely built inside of Zoom, where you're not having to go anywhere else, you're not having to do anything in a different ecosystem, then really the best you can get is that nonverbal feedback system.
All right,
I should mention also, now I have not tested this portion. If you have the most up-to-date version of Zoom, you can actually set, let me see if I can demonstrate it for those of you who haven't seen it yet. You can actually set a PowerPoint as your virtual background. Yeah, so you should be able to see me now in this PowerPoint that we have been using. Now, my question, the thing that is a question that still is outstanding for me that I have not tested is, what if I have a Polleverywhere, what if I have a Polleverywhere poll for PowerPoint, which does have a plugin? If I have that set up, how well does it perform as part of a Zoom background? I don't know. I guess I could test one thing right now while we're here, since you're all here. The thing that I'm not sure on is, are the edits that I am making to this PowerPoint on the fly actually going to yeah, it is pulling a static version of because I just moved this in the actual PowerPoint. It's pulling a static version of the PowerPoint. So however the PowerPoint exists whenever you start it as a virtual background is how it will continue to be displayed the entire time. Therefore, even putting the Polleverywhere PowerPoint plugin as your background, like I've got right here, would not actually work. So as far as pure Zoom integration, yeah, that would have to be just the feedback, unfortunately, which is limited to say the least.
All right, so I do have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
For student presentations, what is the easiest way to have students who are watching live presentations evaluate their peers right after they present? Each student watching would evaluate 10 different students presenting on the same day.
So we're looking for a feedback system. There's a couple answers to that. Honestly, I'm a pretty big fan of Canvas's student feedback system. I know that's completely going outside of Zoom into a whole different ecosystem, but if you have it as an assignment that was set up in Canvas, then the students do their presentations on Zoom. Still having the students enter in their feedback for the other students on Canvas is a really great feedback tool. Now, if you're wanting something that is a little more, a little less canvassy, a little less, looking for not looking for something that takes that much setup from the beginning, you could use a poll. My big concern would be creating polls for that. You would have to have so many there'd be a poll created unique for each person that was participating, unless you created a question for each student that was free form answers and the students could answer them, but you would have to make sure that you never shared that full information with your students. The big issue with student feedback is it's hard to control once you start collecting and start sharing. It's hard to always make sure that you're sharing it properly. And that's one of the reasons that I like Canvas's feedback system that students are able to do so well, is because it has all of those controls already built in. The students know who they're leaving feedback for, they know what assignment they're leaving feedback for, and they know that it's not going to be accidentally shared with the wrong people.
All right. One other question or it's a two-parter. The first part, how do any of these tools deal with multiple sections? And the second part, what is the minimum students need to respond to these questions during a lecture?
So when it comes to multiple sections, on Poll Junkie, I would do a copy of the poll so that you have two versions of the same poll. That way you can have different answers from each. I would assume that if you're having separate sections that you want separate answers from, then there's a chance that you would want multiple sections to all fill out the same. But if you even mention it, I'm assuming that there's a need for a separation. Just simply copying it and having the exact same questions, the exact same responses, but just different links that give you different data sets. That's really easy to do in Poll Junkie. Polleverywhere has a similar feature where you can reuse a poll that has already been created. The difficulty from both is once you have created separate polls, combining that data into a single unit is kind of you're on your own. But if you're needing to, it's typically one or the other, right? You're typically either wanting data from one section and data from another section, and you just need them separated, or you just collect them as one, and there's not really an issue there.
Alrighty, and that second part, what is the minimum students need to respond to the questions if it's, for example, during a lecture live?
So ideally, for either one, for things to behave properly, for things to look the way that you want them to look, for the students to have the same experience that you are expecting them to see, ideally it's going to be at least a tablet. Now, will it work on their smartphone? Certainly. Both are smartphone optimized. They work for that. They can just go to those links and they can complete them. I believe, and this is the tricky part, Polleverywhere has the ability to text responses. I am not sure which service level is required for that. I'm not sure what type of subscription you have to have in order to be able to text responses to questions. And I don't know if that's the type that we are currently offering. That's a good question for me to look up. I'm not certain on that, but I know Polleverywhere does offer a text option. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody actually use it.
Okay, and we are getting a little bit of feedback. Someone does say that it depends on the question type, not necessarily a subscription level. So I think we do have some folks with some experience in Polleverywhere for
Okay.
sure. So, but yeah, so that's all the questions that I currently have at the moment. I'll go ahead and make this the last call since we have about 5 minutes left. Go ahead, if you have another question, feel free to click on that Q&A button and send it over our way. And if you come up with a question later that you'd like to have answered, just send an email over to help@smu.edu and we can get you connected with someone that can definitely get that answered for you. But last call for questions for this session. Go ahead and click on that Q&A button if you have one. And Levi, if someone does want to have a poll anywhere or everywhere, sorry, license, is the process also similar? They can either contact the ATSD or send an email to help@SMU?
Yep, for Polleverywhere, contact your ATSD or help@SMU. Either one
Excellent.
will work.
Okay. And I do have another question. Will all of the results for Polleveryware or whatever they may be using, can they be saved and linked to Canvas?
Yes, there is not any sort of direct plugin necessarily, but yes, they can all be downloaded into a number of formats. Both Polleverywhere and Junkie have CSV type documents, spreadsheets that you can download that if you want to have that raw data to really look at, but also both provide those nice flashy graphics, whether you want bar graphs or pie charts that you could input as well.
Okay. And that was the last one that I had there. So I guess we can go ahead and start wrapping things up. Oh, here we go. Where and when will this webinar be posted? Since I joined late, that is perfectly fine. I can answer that question. We are working on getting all of the recordings currently processed. We are uploading them as we speak. I'm watching them being uploaded to our YouTube. They're unlisted right now, but we're going to get them all publicized, and just stay tuned to that page you went to register for these webinars, and those registration buttons will soon be transforming into a watch button. So we will be getting those up. I know that there's a lot of demand for those, but we are working to get all of those put up as soon as possible. So that is where we are right now. So anything else you want to add, Levi, before we wrap it up today?
I got the link to the texting version of Polleveryware in case anybody wants to read a little bit more about that. And what was mentioned in the chat is correct. It is just based on the type of question. It is available for all the different service levels. So that is good to know. I wasn't aware if it had that or not. But yes, it's a pretty straightforward process as far as, completing the polls. Limited number of questions, but still able to get some pretty good data for those of you who are looking to do it, especially if for some reason you have students who either don't have a smartphone or just don't feel like using their data.
All right. All right then. Well, thank you very much, Levi. This has been some great information. And thank you everybody for joining us today. We will get this recording up pretty soon. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact help@smu.edu or call 214-768-HELP. And I believe at 2 o'clock, we are going to be having our next session. So feel free to join us for that as well. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Zach.